Hey everyone. So, have you ever seen a movie that you absolutely loved, only to find out later that the critics completely trashed it? Or maybe you sat through some critically acclaimed masterpiece that just did nothing for you? Well, today, we're digging into that exact feeling. This huge growing gap between professional movie critics and, the people who actually go watch the movies. Okay, let's just dive right in with a perfect, very recent example. Let's talk about the movie Five Nights at Freddy's. On Rotten Tomatoes, the professional critics gave it a pretty dismal 26%. But then you look at the audience score, a massive 84%. I mean, that is not just a gap, that's a canyon. And yeah, to put it lightly, the pros were not fans. The official critical take basically painted this movie as a total failure, something you should definitely skip. According to them, it was just a bad film, period. But then the audience delivered a very, very different verdict, and they delivered it with their wallets. The movie pulled in a staggering $80 million just on its opening weekend. The very people who were told not to see it, well, they went to see it in massive numbers. And that right there, that's the whole mystery we're exploring today. How does a movie that critics declare dead on arrival turn into this huge runaway blockbuster? It's clear there are two completely different conversations happening. And this isn't just about one horror movie, not by a long shot. This is a pattern we're seeing again and again. So it really makes you wonder, what is actually going on with the entire system of movie reviews? All right, let's get into our first big point here. This isn't some rare fluke. This is happening so often, it's starting to feel like the new normal. We see this pattern everywhere. Take Scream 7. Another movie that got slammed by critics but went on to break box office records for its franchise. The indie film Iron Lung had a similar split. And it's not a one-way street either. Starfleet Academy was beloved by critics, but audiences were not on board. The scores are just consistently out of whack. Now, it's worth taking a second just to remember what the whole point of a critic is supposed to be. In theory, their job is to watch a movie and give you their honest personal opinion, good or bad, to help you, the audience, decide if something is worth your time and your money. They're meant to be a trusted guide. So why are these so-called guides pointing one way while the entire crowd stampedes in the other? The analysis we're looking at suggests the answer isn't about individual opinions, but about the data itself, specifically how that data gets collected. It's really just basic statistics. If you take the average opinion from a big, truly random group of critics, it should land pretty darn close to the average opinion of a big, random group of audience members. But as we're seeing over and over, that is just not happening. The averages aren't just a little off, they're on totally different planets. Okay, so let's just follow that logic for a second. The audience, by its very nature, is a pretty random sample of people. All sorts of tastes, all sorts of backgrounds. So if their average score doesn't line up with the critics' average score, well, what does that tell you about the group of critics? And this leads to a pretty powerful conclusion. The pool of professional critics isn't a random sample at all. It's a hand-picked, highly curated group. They're chosen for a specific reason. And that reason might not be to represent what you think. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. Because if they're a hand-picked group, you have to ask, who's doing the picking? And, as is so often the case, the best way to find out is to just follow the money. I mean, when you think about movie reviews, these are the names that pop into your head, right? Rotten Tomatoes, Fandango, IMDb. They're the giants. They're the ones who gather all the scores and pretty much shape how a film is perceived from day one. So, let's just ask a really simple but really important question here. Who actually owns these massive platforms? Who's running the show behind the curtain? And, well, here it is. Rotten Tomatoes is owned by companies like Comcast and Warner Bros. Fandango is owned by NBC Universal, which is owned by Comcast. And IMDb, that's owned by Amazon. Yeah, the very same people who make the movies also own the platforms that review them. So you can probably see where this is going. When the studio is also the scorekeeper, the entire game just changes completely. The argument breaks it down into this clear chain reaction. Step 1, studios own the review sites. Step 2, because of that, the main goal shifts from honest criticism to effective marketing. Step 3, to make sure the marketing is good, critics are chosen and promoted based on how well they align with the studio's message. And finally, Step 4, the audience starts to notice, the trust disappears, and that official critic score starts to feel
irrelevant.
So what this all boils down to is this. The system isn't really designed to find critics who think like you, the audience. The argument is that it's designed to platform critics who will generate positive buzz and basically act as another arm of the movie's marketing department.
But, there's a huge problem with that model. What happens when the public figures out that the game might be rigged? What happens when that marketing tool you've built just stops working?
The analysis we're looking at uses this really powerful metaphor to describe what's happening. It's a snake eating its own tail. It is a system that is literally designed to self-destruct. And that right there is the central paradox of this whole thing. By trying so hard to control and shape critical opinion to use it for marketing, the studios are destroying the one thing that made it valuable in the first place, its credibility. If nobody believes the score, it can't sell tickets. It's useless. And this is all happening at the absolute worst possible time for Hollywood. It's harder than ever to get people into a movie theater, right? They desperately need trusted voices to tell everyone, hey, this movie is actually worth your money. But the argument is that the system they built has completely burned that trust to the ground. Which leaves us with this final, fascinating question. If the official big-name scores are becoming less and less relevant to the public, where do people go for reviews they can actually trust? Who are the new tastemakers going to be? It's something for all of us to think about. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.